Grand Existence, welcome back to JD's Pharmacopoeia. This is a live reading of Einstein, Philosopher, Scientist, the Autobiographical Notes. Maybe I should say the Autobiographical Notes of Einstein, the Philosopher, Scientist. Thank you for joining me here. Without any further ado, I'm going to make me small. Oh no, that's my X. Follow me on X, jdspharmacopoeia.com. Hold on, let me get the correct screen up. We're going to get the screen that I want to share. Sometimes it is a little wonky though. Getting that old screen up. So, okay, there it is. Gonna go full with that. And you know what? I'm gonna put me into the left. Sorry about this back and forth, y'all. I know some of y'all are just here to hear the knowledge, and you must know that these readings are recorded live from my apartment, from my limited knowledge of how computers and cameras and streaming all works, all that stuff. And of course, you can call in live today. You're only going to be able to do it if you already have my phone number, which is unlikely. Camera, make me small. Okay, there we go. So the German is on the left side. Einstein was a German Jew, and so he wrote everything in German. It's got very like Aleister Crowley Book of the Law type vibes, with the original writing on one side and then the translated on the other. So anyways, again, I digress. I apologize. I'm JD. Welcome to the Pharmacopoeia. We're alive. We're rolling. This is the Autobiographical Notes of Einstein, the Philosopher, Scientist. In his own words. Very exciting. Go watch part 0. Go listen to part 0 if you need to understand, if you need more context. But I'm diving right now, deep diving. Here we go. I'm reading this until I can't anymore. Autobiographical Notes. Here I sit in order to write, at the age of 67, something like my own obituary. I'm doing this not merely because Dr. Schlipp has persuaded me to do it, but because I do, in fact, believe that it is a good thing to show those who are striving alongside of us how one's own striving and searching appears to one in retrospect. After some revelation, I felt how insufficient any such attempt is bound to be, for however brief and limited one's working life may be, and however predominant may be the ways of error, the exposition of that which is worthy of communication does nonetheless not come easy. Today's person of 67 is by no means the same as the one of 50 or 30 or of 20. Every reminiscence is colored by today's being what it is, and therefore by a deceptive point of view. Let me read that again. Every reminiscence is colored by today's being of what it is, and therefore by a deceptive point of view. This consideration could very well deter. Nevertheless, much can be lifted out of one's own experience which is not open to another's consciousness. That's the first time I use consciousness? Okay. This is also a commentary. You should be able to tell the difference between when I'm reading and when I'm being JD, so if you can't, go watch more of my stuff. Familiarize with JD. It is my alternate personality, but it is my real personality. My alternate personality is the one I wear to work every day. Even when I was a fairly precocious young man, the nothingness of the hopes and strivings which chases most men restlessly through life came to my consciousness with considerable vitality. Moreover, I soon discovered the cruelty of that chase, which in those years was much more carefully covered up by hypocrisy and glittering words than is the case today. By the mere existence of his stomach, everyone was conduced. I lost my spot. I'm sorry. I do know how to read. By the mere existence of his stomach, everyone was condemned to participate in that chase. Moreover, it was possible to satisfy the stomach by such participation, but not man insofar as he is a thinking and feeling being. As the first way out there was religion, which is implanted into every child by way of the traditional education machine. Thus I came, despite the fact that I was the son of entirely irreligious Jewish parents, to a Jewish in parentheses, to a deep religiosity, which, however, found an abrupt ending at the age of 12. Through the reading of popular scientific books, I soon reached the conviction that much in the stories of the Bible could not be true. The consequence was a positively fanatic orgy of free thinking, coupled with the impression that youth is intentionally being deceived by the state through lies. It was a crushing impression. Wow, Einstein. Wow. If you don't know this, I haven't said it yet, but this is also my first time reading this. So I've not rehearsed this at all, and you're getting live reactions from me to Einstein's words. That was so cool. I'm going to read this again. Through the reading of popular scientific books, I soon reached the convictions that much in the stories of the Bible could not be true. The consequence was a positively fanatic orgy of free thinking, I love that, coupled with the impression that youth is intentionally being deceived by the state through lies. It was a crushing impression. Long live the spirit of Einstein. He's got me convinced already. I was suspicious at first, Jewish, Freemason, materialist, scientist, but he's not really a materialist. He's actually like an innovator. So, anyways, I digress. Nothing against Freemasons or Jews, but I mean, come on, look at what's going on in the world. I digress thrice. Here we go. Suspicion against every kind of authority grew out of this experience. A skeptical attitude towards the convictions which were alive in any specific social environment. An attitude which has never again left me, even though later on, because of a better insight into the causal connections, it lost some of its original poignancy. It is quite clear to me that the religious paradise of youth, which was thus lost, was a first attempt to free myself from the chains of the merely personal, from an existence which is dominated by wishes, hopes, and primitive feelings. Out yonder, there was this huge world, which exists independently of us human beings, and which stands before us like a great eternal riddle, at least partially accessible to our inspection and thinking. The contemplation of this world beckoned like a liberation, and I soon noticed that many a man whom I had learned to esteem and to admire had found their inner freedom and security in devoted occupation with it. The mental grasp of this extra-personal world within the frame of the given possibilities swam as highest aim half consciously and half unconsciously before my mind's eye. Similarly, and that's the end of a sentence, similarly motivated men of the present and of the past, as well as the insights which they had achieved, were the friends which could not be lost. The road to this paradise was not as comfortable and alluring as the road to the religious paradise, but it has proved itself as trustworthy, and I have never regretted having chosen it. What I have here said is true only within a certain sense, just as a drawing consisting of a few strokes can do justice to a complicated object, full of perplexing details, only in a very limited sense. I feel like something was wrong with that sentence. Let me read it again. What I have here said is true only within a certain sense, just as a drawing consistency of a few strokes can do justice to a complicated object, full of perplexing details, only in a very limited sense. Okay, that made more sense. If an individual enjoys well-ordered thoughts, it is quite possible that this side of his nature may grow more pronounced at the cost of other sides, and thus may determine his mentality in increasing degree. In this case, it is well possible that such an individual in retrospect sees a uniformly systematic development, whereas the actual experience takes place in kaleidoscope particular situations. The manifoldness of the external situations and the narrowness of the momentary content of consciousness. Let me read that again. The manifolds of the external situations and the narrowness of the momentary content of consciousness bring about a sort of atomizing of the life of every human being. Wow, I mean, that's motherfucking profound right there. Alright, well, I'll carry on. I'll think about that later. In a man of my type, the turning point, atomizing way of life. Yeah, in a man of my type, the turning point of the development lies in the fact that gradually the major interest disengages itself to a far-reaching degree from the momentary and the merely personal, and turns towards the striving for a mental grasp of things. Looked at from this point of view, the above schematic remarks contain as much truth as can be uttered in such brevity. I love the word brevity, and I love the word truth. What precisely is thinking? That was me stoned for the first time, thinking about thinking. When at the reception of sense impressions, memory pictures emerge, this is not yet, quote, thinking. And when such pictures form series, each member of which calls forth another, this too is not yet thinking. When, however, a certain picture turns up in many such series, then precisely through such return, it becomes an ordering element for such series, in that it connects series which in themselves are unconnected. Such an element becomes an instrument, a concept. I think that the transition from free association or dreaming to thinking is characterized by the more or less dominating role which the concept plays in it. It is by no means necessary that a concept must be connected with the sensorial, cognizable, and reproducible sign or word. But when this is the case, thinking becomes by means of that fact communicable. Damn, I gotta read that again, yo. Einstein's dropping the wisdom and the knowledge and the deep philosophical thoughts. All right. Let me just read this whole thing again. What precisely is thinking? When at the reception of sense impressions, memory pictures emerge, this is not yet thinking. And when such pictures form series, each member of which calls forth another, this too is not yet thinking. When, however, a certain picture turns up in many such series, then precisely Through such return, it becomes an ordering element for such series in that it connects series which in themselves are unconnected. Such an element becomes an instrument, a concept. I think that the transition from free association or dreaming to thinking is characterized by the more or less dominating role which the concept plays in it. It is by no means necessary that a concept must be connected with a sensorial, cognizable, and reproducible sign, word in parentheses. But when this is the case, thinking becomes by means of that fact communicable. Wow. Oh, you're right. I don't disagree with you, sir. With what right, the reader will ask? Does the man operate so carelessly and primitively with ideas in such a problematic realm without making even the least effort to prove anything? Did the reader ask that? What did he even say? With what right, the reader will ask, does this man operate so carelessly and primitively with ideas in such a problematic realm without even the least effort to prove anything? Good point. You got a fucking brain. Are you using it to solve problems in this problematic realm? My defense, all our thinking is of this nature, of a free play with concepts. The justification for this play lies in the measure of survey over the experience of the senses which we are able to achieve with its aid. The concept of truth cannot yet be applied to such a structure. To my thinking, this concept can come in question only when a far-reaching agreement or convention concerning the elements and rules of the game is already at hand. For me, so it's like, what the fuck are we all talking about before we actually start talking about it? I feel like is what he's saying. For me, it is not dubious that our thinking goes on for the most part without use of signs or words, and beyond that to a considerable degree unconsciously. For how, otherwise, should it happen that sometimes we wonder quite spontaneously about some experience? This wondering seems to occur when an experience comes into conflict with a world of concepts which is already sufficiently fixed in us. Whenever such a conflict is experienced hard and intensively, it reacts back upon our thought world in a decisive way. Now, you may occasionally hear me turning a camera on and off. You may hear that sound. That's because I've got problems with my streaming software, but I'm working it out live. Thank you for bearing patience. Give me 1 second. This was a very, very enlightening first 2 pages. So, let me read that again. For me, it is not dubious that our thinking goes on for the most part without use of signs or words, and beyond that to a considerable degree unconsciously. For how, otherwise, should it happen that sometimes we wonder quite spontaneously about some experience? This wondering seems to occur when an experience comes into conflict with a world of concepts which is already sufficiently fixed in us. Whenever such a conflict is experienced hard and intensively, it reacts back upon our thought world in a decisive way. The development of this thought world is in a certain sense a continuous flight from wonder. A wonder of such nature I experienced as a child of 4 or 5 years when my father showed me a compass. That this needle behaved in such a determined way did not at all fit into the nature of events, which could find a place in the unconscious world of concepts, effect connected with direct touch. I can still remember, or at least believe I can remember that this experience made a deep and lasting impression upon me. I mean, wow, what a time when kids were impressed by the mechanics of a compass, so much so that they went and made general relativity and special relativity. Pretty incredible. Pretty incredible. Now the kids are so caught up in Fortnite and iPhones that they don't even know what the how did he say it? This needle behaved did not. They don't even know what the real common nature of events are. Anyways, I go on. I digress. What man sees before him from infancy causes no reaction. Oh, sorry, I skipped something. Sorry. This needle behaved in a determined way, did not fall into the nature of events, which could find a place in the unconscious world of concepts or the effect connected with direct touch. Okay, I can still remember, or at least believe I can remember, that this experience made a deep and lasting impact upon me. Something deeply hidden had to be behind things. What man sees before him from infancy causes no reaction of this kind. He is not surprised over the falling of bodies, concerning wind and rain, nor concerning the moon, or about the fact that the moon does not fall down, nor concerning the differences between living and non-living matter. Damn, my camera. What? I mean, incredible. Mr. Einstein. Where does the math connect into all this? Don't we all want to know? I mean, that was fantastic. Something deeply hidden had to be behind things. What man sees before him from infancy causes no reaction of this kind. He is not surprised over the falling of bodies, concerning wind and rain, nor concerning the moon, or about the fact that the moon does not fall down, nor concerning the differences between living and non-living matter. What are the differences? At the age of 12, I experienced a second wonder of a totally different nature in a little book dealing with Euclidean plane geometry, plane, P-L-A-N-E, which came into my hands at the beginning of a school year. Here were assertions, as for example the intersection of the three altitudes of a triangle in one point which, though by no means evident, could nevertheless be proved with such certainty that any doubt appeared to be out of the question. This lucidity and certainty made an indescribable impression upon me. That the axiom had to be accepted unproved did not disturb me. In any case, it was quite sufficient for me if I could peg proofs upon propositions the validity of which did not seem to me to be dubious. For example, I remember, please give me an example, because I don't even understand what you just said other than the fact that, like, you're not questioning. I don't even know what he said. I'm not even going to try. For example, I remember that an uncle told me that the Pythagorean theorem before the Holy Geometry booklet had come into my hands. I'm sorry, that didn't make sense. For example, I remember that an uncle told me the Pythagorean theorem before the Holy Geometry booklet had come into my hands. After much effort, I succeeded in, quote, proving this theorem on the basis of the similarity of triangles. In doing so, it seemed to me, quote, evident that the relations of the sides of the right-angled triangles would have to be completely determined by one of the acute angles. Only something which did not in similar fashion seem to be, quote, evident appeared to me to be in need of any proof at all. Also, the objects of sensory perception which can be seen and touched. This primitive idea, which probably also lies at the bottom of the well-known Kantian problematic concerning the possibility of synthetic judgments a priori, rest obviously upon the fact that the relation of the geometrical concepts to objects of direct experience, rigid rod, finite interval, etc., was unconsciously present. So for those of you that don't know, I always thought a priori and posteriori, however you say that, was an interesting concept. So I'm going to read what a priori and a posteriori are. A priori and a posteriori are Latin phrases used in philosophy to distinguish types of knowledge, justification, or argument by their reliance on experience. A priori knowledge is independent from any experience. Examples include math, tautology, I know the word, I can't pronounce it. And deduction from pure reason. Those are all a priori. A posteriori knowledge depends on empirical evidence. Examples include most fields of science and aspects of personal knowledge. So with that in mind, let's go back. This primitive idea, which probably... Oh, Raphael stepping on the keyboard. Sorry, buddy. I had to pick you up. This primitive idea, which probably also lies at the bottom of the well-known Kantian problematic concerning the possibility of synthetic judgments a priori, rests obviously upon the fact that the relation of the geometrical concepts to objects of direct experience was unconsciously present. Those objects of direct experience, the rigid rod, the finite interval, etc. If thus it appeared that it was possible to get certain knowledge of the objects of experience by means of pure thinking, this wonder rested upon an error. Nevertheless, for anyone who experiences it for the first time, it is marvelous enough that a man is capable at all to reach such a degree of certainty and purity in pure thinking as the Greeks showed us for the first time to be possible in geometry. Now that I have allowed myself to be carried away sufficiently to interrupt my scantily begun obituary, I shall not hesitate to state here in a few sentences my epistemological credo. Although in what precedes something has already incidentally been said about this. This credo actually evolved only much later and very slowly and does not correspond with the point of view I held in younger years. I see on the one side the totality of the sense I see on one side the totality of sense experiences, and on the other the totality of the concepts and propositions which are laid down in books. The relations between the concepts and propositions among themselves and each other are of a logical nature, and the business of logical thinking is strictly limited to the achievement of the connection between concepts and propositions among each other, accordingly to firmly laid down rules which are the concern of logic. The concepts and propositions get, quote, meaning or, quote, content only through their connection with sense experiences. That's the motherfucking truth right there. Holy shit. That's the true right there. Let me read that again. The relations between the concepts and propositions among themselves and each other are of a logical nature, and the business of logical thinking is strictly limited to the achievement of the connection between concepts and propositions among each other, according to firmly laid down rules which are the concern of logic. The concepts and propositions get meaning and, quote, content only through their connection with sense experiences. The connection of the latter with the former is purely intuitive, not itself of a logical nature. The degree of certainty with which this with which this relation intuitive connection can be undertaken, and nothing else differentiates empty fantasy from scientific truth. The system of concepts is a creation of man together with the rules of syntax, which constitute the structure of the conceptual systems. Although the conceptual systems are logically entirely arbitrary, they are bound by the aim to permit the most nearly possible certain intuitive and complete coordination with the totality of sense experiences. Secondly, they aim at greatest possible sparsity of their logically independent elements, basic concepts and axioms, i.e., undefined concepts, and underived postulated propositions. A proposition is correct if, within a logical system, it is deduced according to the accepted logical rules. A system has truth content according to the certainty and completeness of its coordination possibility to the totality of experience. A correct proposition borrows its truth from the truth content of the system to which it belongs. A remark to the historical development. Hume saw clearly that certain concepts, as for example that of causality, cannot be deduced from the material of experience by logical methods. Kant, thoroughly convinced by the indispensability of certain concepts, took them, just as they are selected, to be the necessary premises of every kind of thinking, and differentiated them from concepts of empirical origin. I am convinced, however, that this differentiation is erroneous, i.e., that it does not do justice to the problem in a natural way. All concepts, even those which are closest to experience, are from the point of view of logic freely chosen conventions, just as is the case with the concept of causality, with which this problematic concerned itself in the first instance. And now back to the obituary. At the age of 12 to 16, I familiarized myself with the elements of mathematics together with the principles of differential and integral calculus. Bro started early. In doing so, I had the good fortune of hitting on books which were not too particular in their logical rigor, but which made up for this by permitting the main thoughts to stand out clearly and synoptically. This occupation was, on the whole, truly fascinating. Climaxes were reached whose impression could easily compete with that of elementary geometry. The basic idea of analytical geometry, the infinite series, the concepts of differential and integral. I also had the good fortune of getting to know the essential results and methods of the entire field of the natural sciences in an excellent popular exposition, which limited itself almost throughout to the qualitative aspects. Bernstein's People's Books on the Natural Science, a work of 5 or 6 volumes, a work which I read with breathless attention. I also already studied some theoretical physics when at the age of 17 I entered the Polytechnic Institute of Zurich as a student of mathematics and physics. The hell was I doing at 17? Not giving a shit about science or math, that's for sure. There I had excellent teachers, for example, Hurwitz Minkowski, so that I really could have gotten a sound mathematical education. However, I worked most of the time in the physical laboratory, fascinated by the direct contact with experience. The balance of the time I used in the main in order to study at home the works of Kirchhoff, Helmholtz, Hertz, etc. The fact that I neglected mathematics to a certain extent had its cause not merely in my stronger interest in the natural sciences and in mathematics, but also in the following strange experience. I saw that mathematics was split up into numerous specialties, each of which could easily absorb the short lifetime granted to us. Consequently, I saw myself in the position of Bertian's ass, which was unable to decide upon itself any specific bundle of hay. This was obviously due to the fact that my intuition was not strong enough in the field of mathematics in order to differentiate clearly the fundamentally important, that which is really basic, from the rest or the mere or less dispensable erudition. Beyond this, however, my interest in the knowledge of nature was also unqualifiedly stronger, and it was not clear to me as a student that the approach to a more profound knowledge of the basic principles of physics is tied up with the most intricate mathematical models. This dawned upon me only gradually after years of independent scientific work. Wow, really? I mean, okay, cool, yeah. I'm not saying I figured that one out before Einstein, but like that one seems kind of obvious, don't you think? True enough, physics also was divided into separate fields, each of which was capable of devouring a short lifetime of work without having satisfied the hunger for deeper knowledge. The mass of insufficiently connected experimental data was overwhelming here also. In this field, however, I soon learned to scent out that which was able to lead to fundamentals and to turn aside from everything else, from the multitude of things which clutter up the mind and divert it from the essential. The hitch in this was, of course, the fact that one had to cram all this stuff into one's mind for the examinations, whether one liked it or not. I feel you on that, bro. This coercion had such a deterring effect upon me, Einstein, that after I had passed the final examination, I found the consideration of any scientific problems distasteful to me for an entire year. In justice, I must add, however, that in Switzerland we had to suffer far less under such coercion, which smothers every truly scientific impulse, than is the case in many another locality. There were altogether only 2 examinations aside from these. One could just about do as one pleased. This was especially the case if one had a friend, as did I, who attended the lectures regularly and who worked over their content conscientiously. This gave one freedom in the choice of the pursuits until a few months before the examination, a freedom which I enjoyed to a great extent and have gladly taken into the bargain the bad conscience connected with it as by far the lesser evil. It is, in fact, nothing short of a miracle that the modern methods of instruction have not yet entirely strangled the holy curiosity of inquiry, for this delicate little plant, aside from stimulation, stands mainly in the need of freedom. Without this, it goes to wreck and ruin without fail. Damn, that was good. I'm going to read that again because it was so good. It is, in fact, nothing short of a miracle that the modern methods of instruction have not yet entirely strangled the holy curiosity of inquiry. For this delicate little plant, aside from stimulation, stands mainly in need of freedom. Without this, it goes to wreck and ruin without fail. Damn, the fact Einstein A, just referred to himself as a plant, B, casts the most wicked calling out of the scientific educational institutions, and C, called curiosity and inquiry holy, just made my whole night, week, next few days, next few weeks, next few months. It is a very grave mistake to think that the enjoyment of seeing and searching can be promoted by means of coercion and a sense of duty. To the contrary, I believe that it would be possible to rob even a healthy beast of prey of its voraciousness if it were possible, with the aid of a whip, to force the beast to devour continuously, even when not hungry, especially if the food handed out under such coercion were to be selected accordingly. Now to the field of physics as it presented itself at that time. In spite of all the fruitlessness in particulars, dogmatic rigidity prevailed in matters of principles. In the beginning, if there was such a thing, God created Newton's laws of motions, together with the necessary masses and forces. This is all. Everything beyond this follows from the development of appropriate mathematical methods by means of deduction. What the 19th century, see, that's a fundamental flaw in thinking there, my friend. So that's why the general theory of relativity cannot be reconciled with the theory of gravity. That's why it can't be reconciled with quantum mechanics, dark matter, dark energy, or anything else that falls outside the standard model. Because Newton's first law of motion is fundamentally flawed. So to say that there is nothing outside of Newton's laws is just to ignore the reality of the truth, that is, the mechanics of life itself are fundamentally mystical and spooky in nature. You can take that to the bank. Hold on 1 second. What the 19th century achieved on the strength of this basis, especially through the application of the partial differential equations, was bound to arouse the admiration of every receptive person. Newton was probably first to reveal, in his theory of sound transmission, the efficacy of partial differential equations. Euler had already created the foundation of hydrodynamics, but the more precise development of the mechanics of discrete masses as the basis of all physics was the achievement of the 19th century. What made the greatest impression upon the student, however, was less the technical construction of mechanics or the solution of complicated problems than the achievement of mechanics in areas which apparently had nothing to do with mechanics, i.e., the mechanical theory of light, which conceived of light as the wave motion of a quasi-rigid elastic ether, and above all the kinetic theory of gases. Kinetic theory of gases? Lost my spot. Kinetic theory of gases, which is the independence of the specific heat of monoatomic gases of the atomic weight, the derivation of the equation of state of a gas and its relation to the specific heat, the kinetic theory of the dissociation of gases, and above all, the quantitative connection of viscosity, heat conduction, and diffusion of gases, which also furnish the absolute magnitude of the atom. Camera fixing real quick. These results supported at the same time mechanics as the foundation of physics and of the atomic hypothesis, which latter was already firmly anchored in chemistry. However, in chemistry, only the ratios of the atomic masses played any role, not their absolute magnitudes, so that atomic theory could be viewed more as a visualizing symbol than as knowledge concerning the factual construction of matter. Okay, I'm gonna read that again. Maybe that's why we need PChem, and that's why you need to take calculus if you're taking PChem. However, in chemistry, only the ratios of the atomic masses played any role, not their absolute magnitudes, so that atomic theory could be viewed more as a visualizing symbol than as knowledge concerning the factual construction of matter. Wow. So what is chemistry just like an interface with the visual, physical fabric of reality? It's not actually reality. Are you talking shit on chemistry, Einstein? Apart from this, it was also of profound interest that the statistical theory of classical mechanics was able to deduce the basic laws of thermodynamics, something which was in essence already accomplished by Boltzmann. We must not be surprised, therefore, that, so to speak, all physicists of the last century saw in classical mechanics a firm and final foundation for all physics. Yes, indeed, for all natural science, and that they never grew tired in their attempts to base Maxwell's theory of electromagnetism, which in the meantime was slowly beginning to win out, upon mechanics as well. Even Maxwell and Hertz, who was that? Hubert? Henry? Hank? I don't know. H. Hertz, who in retrospect appear as those who demolished the faith in mechanics as the final basis of all physical thinking, and their conscious thinking adhered throughout to mechanics as the secured basis of physics. It was Ernest Mach who, in his History of Mechanics, shook this dogmatic faith. This book exercised a profound influence upon me in this regard while I was a student. Man, Einstein was great because he's reading all these historical texts about the discovery of these great scientific foundational theories as he's in school, man. There's something about being in school and wanting to learn and seeking out knowledge on your own time with your own intent, instead of just being like a state like little drone just absorbing all of the information that the school's giving you. Did you like how I just used drone and orb in the same like? So there's a lot of drones and orbs going on right now. If you're watching this in the future, the date is December 19th, 2024, and drones and orbs are in the news. We don't know what's going to come of this. Everybody's scared. Not me. I think it's a psyop. Anyways, we're going forward. I think it's a lot of things. Like, I'm not just going to boil it down to a psyop, but like fear, uncertainty, doubt. That's what that is about. And so I'm going to read this again because that was great. The History of Mechanics. When you're in school, you want to learn. You're seeking out knowledge. You're also getting knowledge that's like designed to be given to you to achieve a certain end. Then it's such a powerful time in life. And I don't know, I'm just saying this because I miss school so freaking much. I'm going to read it again. It was Ernest Mach who, in his History of Mechanics, shook this dogmatic faith. This book exercised a profound influence upon me in this regard while I was a student. I see Mach's greatness in his incorruptible skepticism and independence in my younger years. However, Mach's epistemological position also influenced me very greatly, a position which today appears to be essentially untenable. For he did not... sorry, I'm skipping pages trying to define this word. What does untenable mean? For he did not place in the correct light the essentially constructive and speculative nature of thought, and more especially of scientific thought, in consequence of which he condemned theory on precisely those points where its constructive, speculative character unconcealably comes to light, as for example in the kinetic atomic theory. Interesting. So Einstein doesn't think that Mach placed in the correct light the essentially constructive and speculative nature of thought, and more especially scientific thought, in consequence of which he condemned theory on precisely those points where its constructive, speculative character unconcealably comes to light. So he's damning something based off of its uniqueness. Mach. As for example, in kinetic atomic theory. I don't understand that. I might ask Grok about it. What do you mean, for example? Before I enter upon a critique of mechanics as the foundation of physics, something of a broadly general nature will first have to be said concerning the points of view according to which it is possible to criticize physical theories at all. The first point of view is obvious. The theory must not contradict empirical facts. However evident this demand may in the first place appear, its application turns out to be quite delicate. For it is often, perhaps even always, possible to adhere to a general theoretical foundation by securing the adaptation of the theory to the facts by means of artificial additional assumptions. In any case, however, this first point of view is concerned with the confirmation of the theoretical foundation by which by the available empirical facts. I'm just copy and pasting this this excerpt from there so I can ask Grok about it later. The second point of view is concerned with the relation to the material of observation, but is not concerned with the relation to the material of observation, but with the premises of the theory itself, with what may briefly be vaguely be characterized as the naturalness or logical simplicity of the premises, of the basic concepts, and of the relations between these which are taken as a basis. This point of view, an exact formulation of which meets with great difficulties, has played an important role in the selection and evaluation of theories since time immemorial. I love that phrase. The problem here is not simply one of a kind of enumeration of the logically independent premises. If anything like this were at all unequivocally possible, but that of a kind of reciprocal weighing of incommensurable qualities. Furthermore, among theories of equally simple foundation, that one is to be taken as superior which most sharply delimits the qualities of systems in the abstract, i.e., contains the most definite claims. Of the realm of theories I need not speak here, inasmuch as we are confining ourselves to such theories whose object is the totality of all physical appearances. The second point of view may briefly be characterized as concerning itself with the, quote, inner perfection of the theory, whereas the first point of view refers to the external confirmation. The following, I reckon, is also belonging to the, quote, inner perfection of a theory. We prize a theory more highly if, from the logical standpoint, it is not the result of an arbitrary choice among theories which, among themselves, are of equal value and analogously constructed. A little stumble on my pronunciation there. Camera's having a fit back here. Sorry for anybody who's looking at my beautiful face. Come on, Mr. Camera. Where did you go? Much apologies. All right, we're back. We're back up. Analogously constructed. The meager precision of the assertions contained in the last two paragraphs I shall not attempt to excuse by lack of sufficient printing space at my disposal, but confess herewith that I am not, without more ado, immediately, and perhaps not at all capable to replace these hints by more precise definitions. I believe, however, that a sharper formulation would be possible. In any case, it turns out that among the augurs, quote, augurs, I mean, is that a Hindu word? Or like a Latin word? Augur. A portend. I heard that word the other day too. Of an event or circumstances, portend a good or bad outcome. What the fuck does portend mean? Define portend. be a sign or warning that something, especially something momentous or calamitous, is likely to happen. Oh shit. I love that word. Portend. Somebody said that to me the other day. I think they meant to say pretend, and this is the second time I'm seeing it. All right, Siri, stop listening to me, for fuck's sake. Okay, so with all that in mind, in any case, it turns out that among the augurs, I don't even remember what augur means anymore. Portend a good or bad situation. Okay, so among the prophecies. In any case, it turns out that among the augurs, there usually is agreement in judging the, quote, inner perfection of the theories, and even more so concerning the degree of, quote, external confirmation. And now to the critique of mechanics as the base of physics. From the first point of view, confirmation by experiment, the incorporation of wave optics into the mechanical picture of the world was bound to arouse serious misgivings. If light was to be interpreted as undulatory motion in an elastic body, aka ether, this had to be a medium which permeates everything, because of the transversality of the light waves in the main similar to a solid body, yet incompressible, so that longitudinal waves did not exist. This ether had to lead a ghostly existence alongside the rest of matter, inasmuch as it seemed to offer no resistance whatever to the motion of ponderable bodies. We're getting in it now. I don't know if I'm supposed to be commentating on this, but this is it, dude. This is it. So, this is fucking fascinating. Thank you for being here. My balding ass. In order to explain the refraction indices of transparent bodies, and as well as the processes of emission and absorption of radiation, one would have had to assume complicated reciprocal actions between the two types of matter, something which was not even seriously tried, let alone achieved. Furthermore, the electromagnetic forces necessitated the introduction of electric masses, which, although they had no noticeable inertia, yet interacted with each other, and whose interaction was, moreover, in contrast to the force of gravitation of a polar type. The factor which finally succeeded, after long hesitation, to bring the physicists slowly around to give up the faith in the possibility that all of physics could be founded upon Newton's mechanics was the electrodynamics of Faraday and Maxwell. Okay, so maybe what he said earlier about in the beginning God created, it's I might have to go back and read that, but I'm going to keep going forward until I find a stopping point, and then I'm going to go figure out if I even interpreted that correctly, because I know I said some shit about what he said, but it turns out I might be agreeing with him more than I initially thought. The factor which finally succeeded, after long hesitation, to bring the physicists slowly round to give up the faith in the possibility that all physics could be founded upon Newton's mechanics was the electrodynamics of Faraday and Maxwell. For this theory and its confirmation by Hertz's experiments showed that there are electromagnetic phenomena which by their very nature are detached from every ponderable matter, namely the waves in empty space, which consist of electromagnetic, quote, fields. If mechanics was to be maintained as the foundation of physics, Maxwell's equation had to be interpreted mechanically. This was zealously but fruitlessly attempted, while the equations were proving themselves fruitful in mounting degree. I guess it's just weird translating German from English, because it's the sentences are backwards. But anyways, One got used to operating with these fields as independent substances without finding it necessary to give oneself an account of their mechanical nature. Thus, mechanics as the basis of physics was being abandoned, almost unnoticeably, because its adaptability to the facts presented itself finally as hopeless. Since then, there exist two types of conceptual elements. On the one hand, material points with forces at a distance between them, and on the other hand, the continuous field. Wow, okay. Since then, there exist two types of conceptual elements. One, on the one hand, material points with forces at a distance between them, and on the other hand, the continuous field. It presents an intermediate state in physics without a uniform basis for the entirety, which, although unsatisfactory, is far from having been superseded. Wow. There is no uniform basis for the totality of existence. But neither of these two theories have been superseded. In fact, they are far from superseded. Oh, yeah, I'm taking that down as a note. Now, for a few remarks to the critique of mechanics as the foundation of physics from the second, the quote, interior point of view. In today's state of science, after the departure from the physical... Sorry, I gotta see how long I've been going for. How long have I been going for? Hold up, y'all. I'm gonna read that sentence again. I know I get distracted a lot in this, but okay, it's been an hour of reading. Maybe next page or something, I will settle down. So let me finish this page and get to the end of the next paragraph. And then I'm going to end part one. So those are the two elements. Now for a few remarks to the critique of mechanics as the foundation of physics from the second, the quote, interior point of view. In today's state of science, i.e. the departure from the mechanical foundation, such critique has only an interest in method left. But such a critique is well suited to show the type of argumentation which, in the choice of theories in the future, will have to play in all the greater role the more the basic concepts and axioms distance themselves from what is directly observable, so that the confrontation of the implications of theory by the facts becomes constantly more difficult and more drawn out. Wow, my dude, that sentence was difficult and drawn out. But such a critique, I'm reading it again, but such a critique is well suited to show the type of argumentation which, in the choice of theories in the future, will have to play an all the greater role the more the basic concepts and axioms distance themselves from what is directly observable, so that the confrontation of the implications of theory by the facts becomes constantly more difficult and more drawn out. How that was a goddamn prophecy. That was a prophecy, if I ever heard one. First in line to be mentioned is Mach's argument, which, however, had already been clearly recognized by Newton's, quote, bucket experiment. From the standpoint of purely geometrical description, all, quote, rigid coordinate systems are among themselves logically equivalent. The equations of mechanics, for example, this is already true of the law of inertia. The equations of mechanics claim validity only when referred to a specific class of such systems, i.e., the inertial systems. In this coordinate system as bodily object is without any significance. It is necessary, therefore, in order to justify the necessity of the specific choice, to look for something which lies outside of the objects, masses, distances, with which the theory is concerned. For this reason, absolute space, as originally determinative, was quite explicitly introduced by Newton as the omnipresent active participant in all mechanical events. By absolute, he obviously means uninfluenced by the masses and by their motion. Obviously. What makes this state of affairs appear particularly offensive is the fact that there are supposed to be infinitely many inertial systems relative to each other in uniform translation, which are supposed to be distinguished among all other rigid systems. I don't know where he got those ideas from. Probably from some logical book somewhere. Mach conjectures that in a truly rational theory, inertia would have to depend upon the interaction of the masses, precisely as was true for Newton's other forces, a conception which for a long time I considered as in principle the correct one. It presupposes implicitly, however, that the basic theory should be of the general type of Newton's mechanics, masses and their interaction as the original concepts. The attempt at such a solution does not fit into a consistent field theory, as will be immediately recognized. However, how sound, however, Mach's critique is an essence. Oh my God. How sound, however, Mach's critique is in essence can be seen particularly clearly from the following analogy. Let us imagine people construct a mechanics who know only a very small part of the Earth's surface and who also cannot see any stars. They will be inclined to ascribe special physical attributes to the vertical dimension of space, direction of the acceleration of falling bodies, and on the ground of such a conceptual basis, will offer reasons that the earth is in most places horizontal. What the fuck does that mean? They might not permit themselves to be influenced by the argument that, as concerns the geometrical properties, space is isotrope and that it is therefore supposed to be unsatisfactory to postulate basic physical laws according to which there is supposed to be a preferential direction. They will probably be inclined, analogously to Newton, to assert the absoluteness of the vertical as proved by experience as something with which one simply would have to come to terms. The preference given to the vertical over all other spatial directions is directly analogous to the preference given to inertial systems over other rigid coordination systems. Okay, I can bring it all full circle right there. Now to a consideration of other arguments which also concern themselves with the inner simplicity, i.e. naturalness of mechanics. If one puts up with the concepts of space, including geometry, and time without critical doubts, then there exists no reason to object to the idea of action at a distance, even though such a concept is unsuited to the ideas which one forms on the basis of the raw experience of daily life. However, there is another consideration which causes mechanics, taken as the base of physics, to appear as primitive. Essentially, there exist two laws. One, the law of motion, and two, the expression for force or potential energy. That is where I'm going to stop reading for part 1. If you enjoyed that, I don't know, like, comment, subscribe. I don't know what the fuck to say. Grand existence, you seeker of knowledge, you lover of truth, you fisher of wisdom. You are here listening to the autobiographical notes of Einstein, the philosopher scientist, as read and commentated on with J.D. So that says something, and I applaud you, sir or ma'am. Have a grand existence. See you.